The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Welcome to Good Medicine. I'm Holly Davis, and we're on. I got the Boysons with me today, and we're talking about trauma recovery yoga, something that's very, very near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about it as well. So we're going to share. I'm a clinical professional counselor here in Las Vegas and a life coach, and I use the trauma recovery yoga in my practice, and I can't tell you how happy I am. If I could just do trauma recovery yoga for a living and that's all, I would be happy. I would work up to do that.
That's fantastic to hear. Yes,
I love it. So we were trained in, was it February, March? March, and it has been a life changer for me. So we did the trauma recovery yoga at Sin City Yoga, whoop whoop, and I just was interested. I heard about you guys at, I think it was the festival, the yoga festival.
Yes.
And at Springs Preserves. And I was like, oh, trauma recovery yoga, that is interesting. And I'm interested, so I took the trauma and the recovery yoga. Then I realized I had to become an actual yoga teacher.
I'm so proud of you. That's a lot to take on. Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. So I did it. I finished. It was like 25 hours of yoga a week with my career, my kids, and everything else. But I wanted to do it so badly. And so thank you guys for helping me
Thank you.
A little nudge.
Yes, a nudge, and being able to do an amazing, by the way, it was an amazing 2 or 3 days of learning trauma recovery yoga. But the other thing that really struck a chord with me is I saw your video. I don't even know how that happened. I guess I gave you guys my email information at Springs Preserve. And so I don't want to reenact it because you can never capture this back on film, but can you please share a little bit, Joyce, where trauma recovery yoga started?
Right. Well, that video that you're talking about is the why. It is the reason that trauma recovery yoga exists, and it makes sense because it started through trauma. And I originally started teaching yoga in 2007 to underprivileged, invisible, kind of the ignored population that you wouldn't see at a yoga studio. And then I had traumas that I wouldn't say they're quite common. You know, the economic bubble burst, that we lost everything, I had a divorce, I was in an abusive marriage, and so on. But then in 2012, in November, I'm going to try not to cry.
Cry, we love crying. Cry.
My, actually, I'd just gone through a divorce in October 2012. And 1 month later, my son, who was stationed in Virginia, it was his 22nd birthday. He went out partying, and he was, he had 3 underways, and he had been out to sea. And then he was traveling back to base in a cab. And that cab, he asked the cab to let him out at a train track. Sounds like a recipe for disaster. And it was because he thought, he is back from deployment full of testosterone and alcohol, and he tried to jump on that moving train. The train pulled him under and dismembered his legs at the hip that night. So I was trying to call him for his birthday the next morning, and I couldn't reach him, and I'm leaving all these happy birthday messages, and then I get a call from his chief petty officer. And I always say, we're all one phone call from dropping to our knees, and that's what I did. I fell, I screamed, I didn't believe it, but I went to Virginia, and I was blessed in so many ways. The worst thing that ever happened to me became also the biggest blessing. It was like the ugliest gift in the most beautiful wrapping paper. I can't explain it, but I was blessed to be with him and have him tell me he loved me 100 times, and we, coming in and out of up from under the drugs that he was under. But I did watch my son die over 9 days, which was the cause of the diagnosis of PTSD. Understandable. And I feel like my whole life, all those other things that were happening to me were trauma and they were just whispers. And so finally God yelled, and I heard him this time. I promise. You don't have to keep yelling. So I was then put, of course, the VA stepped in. I'm a Gold Star mom. They started, helping me with counseling and things, but I was prescribed a lot of drugs, which is standard practice. And it was nice to take a brain vacation, to be able
I'm
to
glad you
sleep.
just took a vacation and didn't live
Yes.
there, which many
Right.
people do.
Right, thank you. So yeah, and I think though, once you've, because I was practicing yoga and meditation, and I always was working on that inner conversation. So there was an inner conversation, that little voice, which we all have, that we lose contact with too often, that was saying, you're better than this, you're here for a reason, and telling me. So I just started leaning more into yoga and meditation and away from the drugs that were prescribed. And then I started going to yoga classes and then getting really upset because I just wanted to be, I didn't want to isolate anymore, because isolation is a thing. I didn't want to isolate anymore, but I also didn't want to be the center of attention. I didn't want sympathy. I just wanted to be with people letting go, right? And I was like, hey, stand on your head. Hey, push this way. Oh, the lights are on. Joyce, move your foot this way. They're touching me. I'm like, stop touching me. Stop saying my name. Stop playing that music. Don't burn those incense. Don't have other people look at me. All these things. So the method, that's how Try was created. I picked out all the things that were triggering me. And still in Try, we know we're going to trigger people. You can't take out all the triggers. But we've just created this do no harm kind of practice or method, and then implemented other things that were coming to me through talk therapy, which is beautiful, meditation with Tibetan monks, essential oils, massage therapy, all these other techniques that created this method. And I started doing it, and then I met Darwin at a charity event, and he, after we were together for a couple months, I said, yeah, I need a charity to start giving to, but I was teaching to traumatic brain injury patients and vets and stuff, and he was like, you should be your own charity, like what you have.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
He's like, what you have is worthy of the money that you're raising for other people, and what you have you need to be able to bring to more people. And so I named it, and that was 1 year ago in June.
This has only been going on for a year.
It's only been
1 year
going on
ago
for a
in
year.
June. Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah,
Blow me
insane.
down.
I know. You were the first training. March was
Serious?
the first training. Yeah. Ching.
Blow me down. That's
And-
awesome. I promise I won't say that again in a sentence today. But that is so awesome.
I'm
How
just covered
guys,
in goosebumps right
you
now.
guys progress so amazingly. Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to Jake's energy. Like I say, it doesn't come from me, it comes through me. And I truly believe that he's propping me up and guiding me to sit next to trauma psychologists at a dinner party who then say, I want to present at your training, or, hooking us up with you, for example. You know what I mean? Like he just keeps going like this and connecting all the dots. I have no other explanation. It's really not explainable.
So Jake, your son,
Yeah.
I remember you sharing the story in our training that you were working with impoverished people groups before anyway, and that he was super proud of the work that you
Right.
did.
The first work I started as a yogi to help people of trauma was through Yoga Gangster, which is, it was a nonprofit in Florida.
I love that.
And they specifically train for at-risk youth in detention centers and transitional housing facilities. So it was a really good training, and I was spreading that. And then Jake was like, Ma, out of all the things you do, like that's the thing I'm most proud of you for. So that, fueled the fire to help, to continue to help. Just feeling like that would have made him happy.
Yeah, in so many ways we've seen him open doors for us and connect us to people. Again, as Joyce had said, from sitting next to the psychologist, Dr. Anders, that we work with, and also even some of the connections we've had along the way, such as even in the UNLV School of Medicine, and happened to bump into one of the assistants there, people working to develop the School of Medicine at that time, and the fact that they wanted to bring alternative medicines in as information for the students.
I love that. And even as far as alternative, I think that it's really interesting because you don't have a clinical background, and you knew all the symptoms and everything that triggered you and everything that you were going through in your own walk, and implemented that in your class. So through your healing, you were able to heal others. And it's interesting, then you get the clinical people who can further expound on, here's what trauma is, here's what to look for, and here's the things that are super, super healing. And, you know, you can't really go through a yoga class, in my experience, and not experience some kind of catharsis or healing or releasing.
Right.
Agreed.
So you're doing all those things, but in a very safe place. Your mat is the most safe place on the planet. And so what I love about your class, I feel more comfortable in your class than other classes too, you know, because you help with the mind chatter, the
Right.
chattavrittis.
Yes.
And so
The monkey mind.
the monkey mind. And so I find that it is very comforting for me. I'm always emotional in your class as well, and you really do push. It's not a baby class.
Right.
Let me just tell you right
Right.
now,
Right.
it is no baby class. But you're incorporating this in so many other different places, aren't you? Even in public schools, and
Right. Yeah.
that's huge that they're letting you in, and it's not like, hey, this is alternative and this is, you know, this metaphysical. This is clinical, but it's practical, it works, and people are getting healed.
Absolutely. What the exciting part was is Joyce was teaching to people with traumatic brain injury, and she's telling me about that. And then the people she was out there working with, I was still in my other profession, but I was doing a lot of research. First of all, to help me better understand Joyce's trauma and how that works and manifests within her.
What a sweetheart.
But also just to find out the why of why yoga would work. So all the things she was telling me about, the techniques such as providing choice, empowerment, not touching, all of these things were extremely important with trauma. And then explaining to her how the breath work and the yoga and the meditation all have physiological benefits. And science was proving it over and over and over again. And so I started getting really excited about it and saying, "This, you're onto something that we need to get out there into the world." Because unfortunately there is more than enough trauma out there, and not enough people out there
Yeah.
really helping.
As you know, unfortunately, business
Isn't
is
that
good.
true? It's you know, so, and most of the time, if you're in a counselor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, anybody who's working in the helping fields, even teachers, you know, anybody who is working with anybody, you are working with people who are in crisis. They've been in crisis, or they're just about to, that one phone call away, right?
Right.
Yes.
So
And
it's everywhere.
That's what we say. Trauma-sensitive yoga is people-sensitive yoga. Because you can hardly have been on this planet for any amount of time without experiencing some kind of trauma or crisis. So everyone is kind of touched by that when we're in these vulnerable spaces. So we call it a do no harm practice, because even though you do get heated, you do get breathy, you do get
Sweat. Let's just
sweat a
put
little
it out
bit.
there.
You sweat
But you have a
little bit.
choice to sweat as much as you want. That's what's great.
It's all
you
about
have the
the
power.
choices, yeah. So, it's amazing to me, like you said, we are bringing together science and what I call woo-woo, bringing together yoga and science, and it's become more of a somatic therapy, and we're trying to break down the stereotypes of what yoga is. Just because of what people see on TV or commercials, and maybe and those things are all lovely, by the way. Look, I love me some Kundalini, I love the all white, I love the robes, right? I love all of those things, and I love Lululemon, and I love the beautiful studios, but that is not reality for a lot of people. There are the places where we teach, there aren't yoga studios for miles, and the people there certainly can't pay $80 a month for an unlimited pass. So, although those places are important, the people we teach to are in the back rooms of community centers or in the cafeteria at the local elementary school. And we are blessed to be at now the VA just opened up a position that you must be trauma recovery yoga certified to apply for. We have 10 schools now,
The
10 elementary schools.
Reinvent program.
Yep. And we
What's the
have
program called?
It's through the city of Las Vegas, and it's their Reinvent program, where they are building a community school. So instead of the school just being in the community, it's actually a piece of the community the school is. And so the city of Las Vegas is bringing in mindfulness, health, And we're part of that through movement and mindfulness
amazing?
Wow.
meditation. And it's all on an effort, again, to improve the communities in those areas. And Joyce hit the nail right on the head, is there is no such thing as yoga in those areas except for on TV. And so the access is not there. And just even the discussions about mindfulness and calming and
Calming the
meditation.
mind, right.
Yeah.
And when we teach in these schools, we have a very specific method that isn't babied down either. It's real yoga, and we only get them for 30 minutes, but we pack it in there and we give them 30 minutes of yoga, so that when they're 15 or 20 and they've already found that feeling, kind of trying to get them hooked young. And yeah, we're just really thrilled about the program. We also working there with Create a Change Now, they build organic edible gardens, obviously, and they do a great job at teaching the kids about the food, introducing them to these vegetables, and then working with chefs to show them how to prepare them. So they get really excited and their eating habits change as well.
That's great.
And then there are tutors in this program that at the Reinvent School. So it's kind of like food. So it's mind, body, spirit.
I love
we're
that.
working, yeah. So they do yoga, and then they do tutoring.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know what is so interesting too is that, you guys get to be an example of health, not perfection,
Right.
but health to these kids who might not otherwise have anyone in their lives to be an example of health. And the other thing is, can you imagine if when you were in elementary or middle school or even high school and you had somebody who could take you through this and teach you how to have stillness of the mind? Because most of my practice in any population that I work with, if we could just learn how to still the mind,
Still.
to go into the body and learn to calm down. Isn't that like the answer?
It is.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talk about it a lot about the science and the autonomic nervous system, and just even your own reception of your body and understanding that. And that's what it's all about. It's connecting. It's connecting with your mind with your body in order to come into that homeostasis level.
Right. Darwin talks about how the science of that stillness, and the original intention of yoga was just to get the extra energy out of the body so that we could find that stillness. So he connects a lot of the dots on why that peace is present, if that you can tap into that. But I like the way he puts it in science terms, because it really reaches more people if we go there. That's why when one of the rules, if there is one, of try is, we don't speak about chakras and bandhas and all of those things. We talk
No
about
Sanskrit?
no Sanskrit.
No Sanskrit.
I know, which is quite contrary. They kind of beat that into you here, but when you're taking your training. I know, but it's important, because the mind's already full of so much chatter after trauma, and now I'm trying to figure out, what did she just say? That's kind of contrary. So all of those little nuances make it the difference, right? But really, it's yoga.
Yeah, the great thing about the method that we've created is it's with the yoga practice and the yoga method, it's not only important about what we're doing, but it's also what we're not doing. And it's
Right.
different than you would say in standard yoga, where the instructors are taught to interact with the students in a certain way, from adjustments to maybe moving around the room, all those things. These are all important factors that we include not to do. So no touching, do not move around the room, people that are on hyper arousal, hyper alert, they don't want anybody touching them or moving around. It's
Don't stand behind them, right?
Yeah.
Don't stand behind
predictability
them.
is
That's
extremely
right.
important.
Predictability.
What's gonna
Because
happen.
the trauma was so unpredictable, and now the world is unpredictable, and I don't know what you're going to do behind me.
Right.
So it really, it's pretty, makes sense. What is the word when it's like common, or, oh my goodness.
Practical. Well, you make it very safe.
Yeah.
You make the environment very safe. And the very interesting thing is, yes, we need the clinical and the clinician part, but you going in there and teaching and healing from your own pain is what I call good medicine. That's why this program is called Good Medicine, because everything I learn in life, it is my duty to share that so that our suffering isn't in vain, right?
Right.
And what's your quote? Let your May your pain be your biggest blessing.
May your loss be a blessing.
May your loss be a blessing.
You can make me cry again. So when Jacob passed, there's a lot of, and I don't blame people. People come from what they know, and everyone kind of lives in their own bubble. Part of try is to build a bridge from bubble to bubble, right? Because we can't really understand someone else unless we kind of invade their space as well. But when Jacob passed, and I got a lot of sorry for your loss, which is lovely. But this old Jewish wise man said to me, "May your loss be a blessing." And it was like, that's the best wish anyone can give me right now, because this sucks. And if I cannot turn it into a blessing, I might as well end it. And I had considered it, of course I did. You can't watch your baby lay there with no legs and then deteriorate over 9 days, suffering and shuddering, and not think, how can I get these pictures out of my mind? How can I live with them there forever? And so part of the process for me is watching. I am my own best case study, if that makes sense. But now, every training, people are drawn to it from their pain. If we have 25 people, 20 of them are definitely there because of their pain, and the other 5 are there because they want to help their son who has PTSD, but he won't let them help them, or their brother who has cancer, but he won't let them help them. So they do have trauma, they just don't realize it's called vicarious trauma, right? You know that. So that turning my loss into a blessing, I made that my mission, and it's not just my blessing, I hope it to be other people's blessing.
It certainly has. It certainly has. We're going to take a small break. When we come back from the break, I want you to go through the class and what someone would expect. Now, we're not going to give them everything because you need to come to a trauma recovery yoga class. And how can we offer that to others? Where could they go to get the information if someone wanted to go to a class? And perhaps just even for themselves. It might not be for someone else. It might be something that you need to do, because really, truly, we all have gone through trauma and we don't even really understand the impact of what things have happened to us that we've carried around for years and years and years. We're not saying that there's, immediate healing when you go to one trauma recovery yoga, right. But boy, it's sure a great beginning.
To step forward, and you start from where you are every single day, and you will be healed inevitably. There's a place there. You've got to deal with the somatic effects of trauma and toxic stress, and the psychological effects. Both of them have to be
when we come back, I'll
with.
tell you a funny story about my testimony of my healing.
And I also want to share too, I do have one client who's young, who is the busiest client I have, and he did trauma recovery yoga, and he was in his little savasana, his little, where he lay down at the end of the class, and he was the most quiet I've ever seen him in 2 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that is, it actually really is huge. So we're going to talk about more victories and how you can get involved with trauma recovery yoga. I'm Holly Davis with the Boysons. Come back and join us for Good Medicine.
Crazy Terry here with your car care tip of the day. So it's not a bad idea every now and then to check your battery. If you don't know how to do it, have somebody check it for you. Just a visual inspection can tell you a lot about your battery. So as we can see here, this battery's got a hold down. It's nice and tight. The cables are on. They don't look bad. We've got a cover. We don't see any corrosion. Everything's kind of tight, looking good. A little bit of dirt, that's normal, but nothing's leaking, no real cause for alarm here. So that's a good sign. Doesn't mean it's good, but at least visually we know that it's intact. Okay, so we're looking at a battery here that shows signs of corrosion. We want to test that battery to make sure it's good. Usually when they're getting like this, there's going to be a problem, leaking some acid at the top. We ran the test and we find out it has 396 cold cranking amps, but the battery requires 650. So it's just not enough. The battery is going to go soon. Better to know now than later. Okay, so the benefits of checking the cable is because this cable's rotted out. What we'll find is this is the problem, not the battery. So it'll save you from buying a battery, still having the no start, only to find out that it's a cable. This type of corrosion is common in diesels. Okay, so we're getting ready to jump the car, but we have to have some battery cables. And we have to check those too before we hook them up to the battery. So here we have our standard set of battery cables. We just look them over, see if the ends are frayed, if everything's connected all right. Everything looks good here. Wouldn't hurt to check the rest of the cable just to make sure the dog didn't get it and chew it up. We have red and black. Red's positive, black's negative. You always want to hook the positive up first and then the negative. And I'll show you how that's done right now. Keep these off to the side so they're not touching each other. Hook up your positive. You can find that right here by the plus sign, the negative sign. Plus is positive, red. Make sure that's securely hooked up. Keeping these away from each other. Hook up your negative cable. Just got to fight it on there. Figure out a way to get it. Wiggle it a little bit so it ensures a good connection. Now you're transferring voltage. If I hit these two together, we're going to spark. Kind of want to avoid that. Won't kill you. Kind of fun. A lot of people think if they can turn the headlights on, the battery's fine. That's not always the case. It takes very little amperage to turn a light on, but it takes a lot of amperage to start the starter. I recommend checking the charging system every oil change. At Sun Valley Automotive, there's never a charge for that. This is Crazy Terry with your car care tip of the day.
We're back on Good Medicine with the Bosons. We've got Darwin and Joyce with Trauma Recovery Yoga. I'm Holly Davis, clinical professional counselor intern here in Las Vegas. And I love Trauma Recovery Yoga. I use it in my practice, and it has really been a life changer for me personally, and it's been a life changer for my clients. A lot of times people say, I think you guys know I have 5 children. So I have a kindergartner and a senior this year.
Itself, okay.
Girl, you don't eat. Just shopping this last week.
Oh, yes.
It can be, it really can be so much that we have going on in our lives that is so different from how life used to be, and going and going and going. It's going to end up being either you're going to stress out, you're going to have trauma, you're going to have anxiety, and the highest form of anxiety is definitely post-traumatic stress syndrome, and that is stress, and anxiety that is paralyzing. And so for me, people do ask, well, how do you do it? And really, it's the little breaks. It's the stillness of the mind. It's the little moment, and literally yoga is what got me through all of my pregnancies and little babies crawling on. I'd be sitting there doing my yoga, and there'd be kids and cats crawling on me. And I'm like, I'm just sitting here. It's important that I just sit here, and people really don't understand how important just nothingness for a minute or two can literally rejuvenate you. For maybe it could even be for the right. Yeah. It couldn't even just be a difference of a day maker, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're highlighting an important factor is that peace is always available. It's in here. Mm-hmm. It's just knowing it's available, which you already know, and then accessing it. And that's where trauma recovery yoga comes in, is helping people access that peace that's always there. Yeah. And once they experience that and experience it again and again, now they have the ability to always access that peace.
Yeah, we say we give them the map. And now they know the route, and they can find it that way.
Isn't that beautiful? It gives me goosebumps. If you know how to do that and find that inner peace, or be in the body and be connected, which most people, I think the biggest form of psychosis is they're running from it, or they're trying to anesthetize themselves from it by substance abuse, right? What, plugging our ears,
even
right?
Working out, like, beating their body up. I say, I like all forms of exercise. I think moving the body is always good. So CrossFit, I don't care what it is, if it makes you happy and moving your body, but be careful to include some mindful movement, because all of that flailing about, to me, and I'm sure there's a science reason behind this, but I feel like, and I've done it, so that's why I feel like this, I was just trying to beat myself out of it, to just beat it out of me, to shut it up, to just scare it away. And that's quite contrary, because we do that, we get all that rolling, then we crash, and now it creeps back. So without intentional movement and letting go and breath, and we do a lot of visualizations, as you know, those pieces of the constant reminders and the affirmations of letting go, because that is the most difficult posture in yoga, right? Letting go. And it is the most difficult thing to do in life. And then add trauma to that.
And actually, even, I think people think that when I'm still on my mat and I'm doing trauma recovery yoga, I have to go through my traumas and I have to look at these things. And actually, I pause, that is not the worst thing that could ever happen to you. But trying to run away from that for the rest of your life, you can't anesthetize yourself enough because it will never go away. But that peace and that calm spot, as people are scared of because they don't know it. It's the unknown, and it's addictive. Once you find that, you're going to want to go back to that mat every day, right?
Yeah.
And so I think going there and taking the power out of that pain is what trauma recovery yoga does.
Turning your pain into your power as well, kind of, transforming it in that way. Because we're definitely not claiming that you're not going to have trigger on the mat, but the tools that we say, I think I got this from Hala Kuran. She said, trigger plus resource equals healing.
Love it. I'm stealing that.
It's so true, right? So if you're on the mat and you become triggered, which you most likely will from time to time in no matter what yoga class, but we, in our method, are constantly pulling you back to a resource and reminding you of your resource. So if you can feel safe, if you can find peace from those moments and training the mind and body to find that on the mat, you'll be able to do that in your car on the way to work or with your kids when they trigger you instead of yelling at them and all of those things. So, they say off the mat into the world. That's the intention as well. I
love that because, I've had clients say, I'm triggered, or you're triggering me.
Yeah.
I'm sure I am.
It happens.
But you're in a safe place. You're with someone who cares right now, and I'm going to give you some tools. But, I'm sure they're going to get triggered. But right there on that map is the safest place on the planet to learn how to be triggered. And then we're not running from it. We're not escaping from it. We're not giving it all this power. Right. Now we're learning what to do. So tell me some of the skills and the tools that you use.
Well, breath is what I always say. Breath is presence. So breath is generally my go-to now. But we teach a section on self-regulation.
Yes.
And in self-regulation, they're orienting breath, grounding, and I always forget the last one.
It's grounding, breath, meditation, or
orientation.
Yes, orientation.
And centering, right? So in the body, in the room, in the breath, and on the earth, and that's where we find ourselves. So those are the tools. Those are the tools and resources that we offer throughout the method, and they're strategically sprinkled throughout because we don't know. We always teach in groups, or I do. I always teach in groups, and I think it works well for private as well, but we're calling out to the whole room. Find this breath, notice your center, and so on, strategically sprinkling it because we don't know who's going to be triggered when.
And you're not calling them out. You're not calling them out by their name. You don't get them a tissue when they cry or pat them. You kind of give them their space, and there's no music. Right. Because music can be very triggering, right? And you try to I think even just the intention of being aware that I know that we're working on healing right here and right now. I think just the unity of having that intention is huge. And that's why groups and therapy are so powerful, right? Because I'm helping you and you're helping me and we're both healing. Or I didn't realize that it was this bad, or at least I'm not as bad as that guy, right?
Yeah.
So groups are so powerful, but when we're all doing the same thing, the same moves, we're all listening to the same instruction. And what I love about the class is that you are literally telling them how to bring the mind back. Right. How powerful is that?
That's the difference. I think one of the major differences. There are some differences. That's one of the major ones is the micro cueing, because what I say, we prepare them before each class so that, like Darwin says.
Yeah, we have a whole script of what we say ahead of time, so they're prepared.
So they're prepared and they understand predictability and rules, because the world has no predictability and the rules don't make sense anymore after trauma. So we tell them that I'm going to be micro cueing you. There's not going to be any music and so on. And I say I'm micro cueing you, and that is to say that I'm going to cue you on each piece, breath and body throughout, so that. Because after trauma, if our mind is left to wander, it finds the dark alley. Or one lady said, yeah, crazy town. It goes straight to crazy town, And that's my testimony too. I was going to tell you a quick story. So we recently went to Disneyland, right? Happiest place on earth.
Lucky.
It was so fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Lucky.
Yeah, we had a great time. But so I'm almost 5 years from my trauma, from the incident. But we went to Disneyland 3 years ago, and I was only about 18 months out, right? And what a stark difference. You know, they say you don't realize how sick you were until you get better, right? And we don't. And I call people too, on the mat too. I'm like, don't worry about where you want to be. Look back at where you were, because you can't see how far you've come until you take a look back.
Yes.
It's okay. And it's okay to be proud of yourself for your progress. So we went to Disneyland the first time, and so hyper vigilant, right? And I was so nervous, and I was just like, my eyes didn't know where to look. That's the best way I can describe it. There were too many people, too many exits, too many noises. I was a nervous wreck. I couldn't stand in line so long, but I didn't know I was sick, right? I just thought, there's just a lot of people here. This line's too long. It's too warm. And I was just uncomfortable. We would get on rides. I would be terrified to get on even
It's a small world.
Well, not that one.
She was okay with.
But even the train one, well, the train one, that kind of makes
Yes,
sense.
for
But
sure.
You get crazy and go on Indiana Jones on that.
yeah,
was
Indiana
top.
Jones, any of those, right? And that's not that scary of a ride, but I didn't know that then. So I had been on that ride before, by the way. But anyway, we're waiting in line, and the fear is building, and I'm anxious. We get on the ride. We do the whole ride. I'm screaming. I'm cussing. I'm freaking out the whole way. We get off the ride, and I'm high-fiving strangers. I'm like, I thought I was going to die, but I didn't. And I'm like, oh my God, it was great, right? And I'm just like screaming in strangers' faces, and they're all just kind of like this, right? So we go. I didn't even know that was weird. That's how trauma takes you to a whole nother level. Like, the world is really unsafe, and be careful because death is around every corner. I mean, for me, through my experience. So we go this last time, and I'm like, I'm not that. Is it less crowded than last time? The lines are moving faster. I'm thinking it's the environment and not me. And I didn't catch on until I went on one of the rides that I thought was going to be scary. I got off and I was like, that wasn't that scary. So that's the progress of finding the center and finding the peace and doing the work to calm that it's letting go of fear in the end.
I love that, the letting go. There's a couple things that I want to share. I just want to give a little piece of the trauma recovery yoga that you do in your class, if I may.
Yeah.
Try to reenact this. And then I want you, Darn, if you will, to talk about the hippocampus and how we take this is bad stuff that happened in this file and move it to the other file of, okay, it was bad, it happened, but it doesn't mean there's looming pain and trauma everywhere I go, okay? So you could probably do a really good job at that. But there's one point in trauma recovery yoga where we're going through a vinyasa, which is getting the body warm and getting rid of some of those energy and talking about the emotional energy that we're keeping. And I love the way that you explain it. But one time in your class, we're doing a warrior one, right? Virabhadrasana one. And
Get it?
and you just all of a sudden put this lantern in our hand, this imaginary lantern, and I was like, yeah, I like that. And we're going to put all the pain, and we're going to start writing on this lantern everything. I'm like, yeah, I am. And then she throws in and we're going to throw in the stuff that hasn't happened or that you want to happen or all the disappointment. We're going to let it go. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. I'm letting that thing go. And those kinds of visualizations are so tangible and so real. And that is what makes trauma recovery yoga so powerful, because anybody, when you go to yoga and you're doing a Virabhadrasana, you know it's warrior, it's power, you know this dance is power. But when you add in the visualization and you add in, and you make it tangible, it really amps it up so
you take
much.
the focus off of, am I doing this right, into what am I doing here, letting go, and you have a mind point that you're focused on. So we always hope that when somebody's doing yoga that they're really more paying attention to how they're feeling and what's going on in their body at the time and how their breath is moving, and we always want that to happen, but also that ability that Joyce provides and that letting go is a whole other aspect to it.
And you say the body doesn't, or the body thinks it's doing what the mind sees it doing, right? So if we actually, that's a thing.
Yes.
Like the same neurons fire whether you're actually doing something or seeing yourself doing it. We use that when we teach.
Like phantom limbs.
Yeah, we use that when we teach to traumatic brain injury and stuff. They can only lift one hand. We say C2.
That's beautiful.
Right. So it's the same concept.
Yeah, your body doesn't know the difference. A synthesized happiness such as that, or a happiness such as, well,
Actually
Disneyland
doing
or
it,
whatever,
yeah.
doing something. Your body doesn't know the difference. If you're really intentionally focused on it, it's going to feel the same. All those endorphins and everything else are going to all come out the same. So, that old fake it till you feel it, synthesized happiness, that there's reality in that, and there's evidence that proves that those actually have the same mental and brain effect through scans.
I'm just sitting here thinking, so we could all be at Disneyland in our mind right
It doesn't
now.
have to be Disneyland. Just has to feel like it.
Yeah, that was one of our sayings when we first met. I was like, baby, it doesn't have to be Niagara Falls. It always just has to feel like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, how do you clinically, or even just using this visualization, using the trauma, take that brain stuff that most of us don't understand, except for Darwin? How do you make it stop always thinking that there's trauma behind every corner?
Well, first and foremost is we want to separate emotion from memory and understand that they are not tied together. The emotion is there and the memory is there, but once you can get to the point where you can have the memory without the emotion, you've finally been able to separate, and that's the goal. That's the objective, and that a lot of that is where the visualization comes in, and the meditation comes in, and the mindfulness comes in. So when you're triggered for a moment, you can go, I'm not here. So, because what happens is when you go through trauma or even levels of toxic stress, so repeated things, your body and your brain specifically, or your limbic system, is going to be put on higher alert or vigilance. Now that trauma, if it's a shock trauma, is going to go right away. If it's a repetitive development, it's going to happen over time. And so over time, what happens is your amygdala, which is the fight, flight, or freeze, the alarm system in your head that says this is a good thing or a bad thing, it's going to respond to that stress. It's going to respond to that shock. And while that's going on, it compromises many other aspects of your nervous system, specifically your executive functions, your frontal lobes. And so when you're going through shock or going through trauma, and remember, this is either ongoing trauma or a shock trauma, your amygdala and your limbic system really take over all the energy of your brain. Mm-hmm. The other parts don't shut down. They still get a little bit of energy to go, but the cognitive and executive functions are all secondary, third, whatever level they're put at. And that amygdala and hippocampus are really interacting. And the hippocampus is really extremely important for that in memory. And this is where triggering and all those things come in, because when we're on high alert, memories are parceled out. They're not nice and concise.
No,
the
do the
hippocampus'
monkey
job.
analogy. I love
Okay,
that.
I'll do that.
Do the monkey analogy.
So there is a thing called the triune brain theory, which is 3 parts of our brain. We have a reptilian part of our brain, which was the first part. And if you imagine, if you look at a fetus in utero, they almost look like a little shrimp. And that's the reptilian brain, and that's how we grow. So the nervous system, the reptilian brain goes first, and then you have your primitive brain, which is your limbic system, and finally you have your what we call your human brain, or your executive functioning brain. And so when you're going through trauma, the memories are being stored by your limbic system and not your executive functions. So we call it the primitive brain. And so you're going through this trauma, whatever is going on, horrible, and your primitive brain is now organizing everything. So you imagine that you've got instead of this nice organized human filing everything in these filing cabinets, and here's your memories, and they're all available when you want it, and there's no emotion attached or anything. It's just a memory. You got your little Dewey Decimal System going on. Well, when you're going through trauma, your primitive brain is doing it. So it's really almost like a monkey is now going to be in charge of filing all of these memories.
Why do I just want to break out in my monkey?
I know.
Put it over here.
So you can imagine the monkey's going,
Yes.
I don't know, your father.
Let's put this one in the forefront of your brain.
Yeah.
So that memory might be stored in your shoulder. It might be stored in your gut. It might be stored in your hips.
Interesting.
In your fascia.
Yeah.
The memory's going to be stored there. So you might be going down the road and just see a pink umbrella, and if something horrible happened with a pink umbrella, you're triggered. You don't even know why, because that memory is not readily available. Or you may be on the mat, and you may be doing pigeon, and you're laying there, and all of a sudden you start crying because it was stored in your hips, and as soon as you release that energy, that memory, you start crying and you don't even understand why.
Yeah.
So when we go through trauma, that is how our memories are stored. And the interesting thing to Joyce's story is when you do go through trauma, or you've gone through toxic stress, you continue to elevate the energy in or the stimulation of your limbic system. That's why people are hypervigilant. And so and they don't even notice. That's just their day to day.
That's why I was freaking out.
So somebody that's calm, per se, will walk around every day, and if a water bottle hits the floor or something, and they just go, oh, it was a water bottle, and that's it, because they're running at this level. Well, if you're on hypervigilance, you're running at a higher level. So when that water bottle hits the floor, all of a sudden, you're freaking out.
Freak out.
And sometimes it takes a couple days to calm back down.
And if you don't have the tools,
resource.
if you have no resource or the tools to calm down, you're just on high alert, not necessarily even knowing it, but you know how you see it is because you're snapping at your kids, you're snapping at your spouse.
Irritation, irritability. Irritation, irritability.
Correct.
Two major side effects that are
Right. And
they're
what are
suffering. Those are symptoms.
Yes.
And they're rooted in fear, right? Well, all negative emotion is rooted in fear. Whatever is causing that is you have some kind of fear. So in boat.
I don't like boat very much. I know it's your favorite, but
Most
all
people
over
don't
this.
like boat, but it works though. It works.
it's my weakest point. So there is through, I believe, through talk therapy and maybe medications. If you have talk therapy, that's my
Yeah.
belief system. You can't just take Xanax or Klonopin or Prozac if you don't have talk therapy combined, so that you know. I'm not saying that you have to be a hero, so there's a place for that. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't speak to that, and I can't hardly even spell psychopharmacology. But I think if you have to take a pill because you can't calm down or because you're that depressed, I think in combination with talk therapy, and then there's beautiful things like trauma recovery yoga, where we learn to have calmness and stillness of the mind, and then that fight or flight and that adrenaline learns after a while to calm down, and that you don't always have to be on the other shoe is going to drop, right? Or it's always horrible, or everything's awful, or when I'm very, very irritated and irritable, I go and I do my yoga and I calm down, and then you don't make such monkey-minded decisions, and
You're not reacting.
you're not reacting.
Life's
Life's not awful. I call it awfulizing.
Yeah.
And so we learn to, just for even 1 hour, just calm down and breathe and connect. And then when you leave, the hope is that we've trained them to take that piece and use it all the time, and just breathe. Like, I notice I'm not breathing right now, but just breathe.
This morning 'cause I was nervous.
Breathe.
Yeah, well, I do want to make some kind of an announcement. I guess.
Go ahead.
So when we first started Try, our mission statement was bringing yoga and meditation to those who've experienced trauma or live in crisis, bringing peace, right, through yoga and meditation. Well, it's become really obvious that I don't need to be the teacher in those classes. There's enough teachers that want to deliver this method. So now our mission statement, like, I haven't even changed it on paper yet, but it is to put this information and this help in as many capable hands as possible, as quickly as possible.
Quickly.
As quickly
Yes.
as possible. So we have been doing trainings with 10 or 15 or 20 people in smaller spaces, with nice spaces, great studios. Sin City Yoga has partnered with us, and they've been fabulous. We did a small one at Yoga Candy, but we need a space that will hold more, like 40 people plus, so that we can deliver to more people more readily. And the other thing I wanted to say is we are going to need a great deal of teachers that have this method, because we have contracts coming online, one with the VA, and thank God for Dr. Nicole Anders, who delivers the psychology of trauma through for Try, and is a big piece of our training and the love we bring. But we're also going to be bringing on more schools. All of these contracts that we're working on require trauma recovery yoga certified teachers, so we need that.
So whether you're a yogi or not, if you're a yoga teacher or not, if you're interested, I would say go, because I didn't even know what an asana was. I didn't even know what a pose was. I knew nothing about yoga. I watched a DVD and did yoga in my front room.
Right. Well, like you said, whether you're a yogi or not, because it's it can be just for you, for your healing, or if you are a helper, if you are a caregiver for someone else, or you just care about people who have, encountered trauma. So it's help. It is just help.
It is help. Where can people go? Go ahead.
Well, I just want to mention is one of the interesting things about every single workshop we have is we have at least one or more people in there that feel that they have never been through a trauma. When they come in, they feel like their childhood or whatever was perfectly fine, and then when we start throwing
You're
up,
one of them.
I'm a great example. When we start talking about things like adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress, and vicarious trauma through working in the social work, they start identifying that maybe I have been, and then they start looking at their own interactions in the world and their anxiety levels, and they find out that I have been disconnected from my emotions. I'm not as socially engaged as I used to be because I'm going through this in my life. So it's a great way for people to really be aware.
It's breakthrough
And
too.
acknowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a breakthrough.
Absolutely.
Self-aware.
What if someone just wanted to be a looky-loo and go to a trauma recovery yoga class? Where could they go to one? I know there's some classes right here at Luminosity Wellness Center, but
Yeah.
let's get them to you guys.
So right now I only teach publicly, I only teach publicly at EOS Fitness on Lake Mead, around the corner from here, Lake Mead in Buffalo, at 11:30 on Fridays. Also, there's a public class open at 705 Art Incubator at 5:45, starting in 2 weeks at 5:45 on Wednesdays.
Correct.
But we have classes available at the VA with Dr. Anders and another teacher there. So if you're a vet, that's something. But I would say just go to traumarecoveryyoga.org. And the classes are posted there. You can also click on Contact Me. You can ask Darwin and I questions
Yes.
all day long, every day. We're constantly looking.
I understand there's a workshop coming up this month, right?
Yeah.
There
Well,
is.
there's one on August 26th. That's full. The room is too full. But the next one is September 13th at Sin City Yoga. You can go to their website too, and sign up there. That one we still have some space left in. And then we're looking for a bigger space in November to try to fill it up.
So it sounds like you guys need, if people reach out in the community and we can make this a grassroots effort. I mean, I could definitely see this something that I think a lot of different people, not just Las Vegas, could use.
Oh, well, actually, New Zealand's
Yes.
talking to us, Liberia's talking to us, and everywhere from Utah to Florida and Arizona.
So thank you for sharing your testimony. I love you guys, you know that, and just using the trauma recovery yoga, that nothing that we go through in our lives is a waste. Every single solitary tear that we have ever shed is not for naught. There is purpose, and the same compassion we've learned and gained from others, then we go and we share with others. So it makes Jake's lives a beautiful thing. It's Jake, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
If I can get science to your point, is that one of the things we talk about in the workshop
30
is
seconds.
physics, equal and opposite reaction. So for everything bad, there's going to be an equal opposite. You just have to find it.
And I think that you guys have done a darn good job, and I know your son would be super, super proud. The Bosons.
He is, he tells me.
Bosons?
Bosons.
The Bosons.
Gosh,
Nailed
I'm
it.
doing this
Thank
right.
you so much, Holly.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you
Thank
very much.
you. So you're listening to Good Medicine on WWDB TV. Join us next time.